It is so close to perfect.
Being European and a performance car, a lot of the things you'd expect to be problematic actually mechanically aren't too bad.
Yeah, that could be my license. Okay, if you identify as any sort of car person, but then claim to not adore an AMG C63 in one way, shape or form, I'm sorry, but you're either lying to yourself, everyone around you, or both. In fact, you know what? I'll go as far as saying, I think it's basically impossible to not fall for the C63's V8 powered charms. However, it does take far more than just charm to make for a truly great car. Before you buy one of these, you really do need to know what goes wrong with them, what they're like to drive and live with, how they're aging. I tell you what, before we answer all of those questions and so many more, you also really do need to know exactly what you might be getting yourself into. With a 4-litre twin-turbo V8 sending power to the rear's AMG enhanced bodywork and the sophistication that comes with a premium Mercedes-Benz, there's no denying the whole C63 recipe is one of the most appealing on our roads. Unfortunately, however, has the C63 been ruined by association? What I mean is that it does seem like quite a few dickheads drive C63s these days. You know, they're the ones that drive like complete arseholes in totally inappropriate areas. For many, so much of the appeal of a car like this is the image they project, and unfortunately, that image is being tarnished by a few wankers. But if you're happy to look past all of that, here are the choices that you're going to need to make. Firstly, body style: cabriolet, coupe, or saloon and estate. And as we all know, the very coolest cars in the world are fast wagons, so therefore a C63 S estate is surely the pick, right? Engine-wise, while all Australian delivered cars are the C63 S, a slightly lower powered C63 is available internationally. Also, just on the mechanicals, the 2018 update, it swapped out the 7-speed dual clutch transmission for a 9-speed auto. Also, just on that update, outside the aesthetics received some very subtle attention, while inside the materials improved, a few more features were thrown in, and the tech was enhanced. And we are talking Mercedes-Benz here, so let's not forget the various special editions, plus the list of optional equipment was copious to say the least. Brand new in Australia, C63s were selling for anywhere from about $160,000 to $200,000. These days on the used market, pricing ranges from about $65,000 to over $350,000. Granted, the really expensive ones are the super rare mint condition final editions, but still across the range, that's a $285,000 difference. And that means that the wrong C63, that could be a financial disaster. The right C63, it might be a pretty sound investment. And interestingly, the same goes for the C63's closest competition. Equivalent period BMW M3 and M4s, they range from about $50,000 to $300,000. The other alternatives like the Audi RS4, the Alfa Romeo Giulia QV, and even the Lexus RCF are a little bit more sensible in terms of price. Now with pricing like this, chances are you're going to be looking at finance options, right? Well, the easiest and quickest way to compare different lenders and their rates is by hitting the driver link down there. Now, I actually did that on this exact car for me, and the overall payout figure at the end of the loan between the cheapest and the most expensive quotes was nearly $15,000. Clearly, there are thousands of dollars to be saved, and to see how much money you could save, yeah, click that link down there. Now, look, before we get into all of the exterior problems and issues, you know what isn't a problem or an issue? The way these things look. All of the body styles, I think they're all exquisite to look at, but if the brief was to create the quintessential German muscle car, surely the coupe absolutely nails it, especially in this color. I adore it. It is so close to perfect. I say so close to perfect because for me, the yellow highlights do nothing for me. I totally get they're to signify the first edition and that's all very special, but I can't help but feel that if you removed the yellow highlights or painted them black, the whole car would look so much more sinister. Speaking of sinister, what goes wrong with the exterior? Well, firstly, a few owners have had issues with the black plastic gloss trim fading. We're talking the roof rails, door trims, the front intake surrounds. All of them can apparently fade to a dark blue color, plus they can eventually come loose and rattle and creak, and that's bloody annoying. Then we come to the sunroof issues. Now, we've found reports of everything from minor issues like rattling and creaking through to complete and utter failures costing thousands of dollars to fix. Problems with the rubber seals, cables going, motors seizing, alignment issues, electronic failures so it doesn't open or close at all. Unfortunately for a few owners, these non-closing issues of the sunroof happened when it started to rain. That's not ideal. Then check all the door seals because a few owners have reported rattling and squeaking and excessive wind noises. Okay, this is a weird one. Apparently the badging here on the front quarter panel, it can have a habit of coming off, especially the T in biturbo. Apparently some of the clear coat on the carbon fibre can flake off, especially on the mirror caps. This little aero addition just here on the rear wheel arch, apparently it can delete itself if you go through a car wash. Okay, this one isn't strictly the car's fault as such, but if the car has an extended front splitter like this one, these hate driveways. Then we come to warnings with cleaning. Apparently certain cleaning products can turn any of the gloss black plastic into rainbows, and to replace all that, you can fix it, it's a nightmare, but to replace it all can cost thousands. Plus the calipers, not just the carbon ceramic ones, all of them, they can all fade to a milky colour if you don't use the right cleaning products. Then there are the odd sporadic reports of weird electronic gremlins, power mirrors playing up, power windows, stuff like that. Not overly common, but they can happen. And then when we spoke to Mercedes-Benz or AMG technicians, they noted that it seems no two C63s share the same sort of build quality. One car will come in and the panel gaps are all over the place. The next one, they're perfect. Another car will come in and it's back to the dealership all the time with all of the problems. And then the next one, a completely fault-free experience. So much for Mercedes-Benz quality control. And then, according to the dealership technicians we spoke to, cars from 2017, like this one, they are the pick as far as build quality and fit and finish. And apparently, they have diminished in quality as the model range went on. And remember, that information is from dealership technicians that work on these day in, day out. Actually, just on all of those mechanics and technicians and the owners groups and forums, guys, thank you so much for helping us research this video. You guys are legends. However, as I may have alluded to earlier, not all owners are wonderful. Plenty of them have completely mistreated these, and that's why it is absolutely critical that you ascertain the vehicle's history before you buy it. Now, to help with that, you need to get yourself a vehicle history check. That'll tell you if there's any money owing on the car, if it's ever been written off, even if it's stolen. And to get one of those, head to ReDriven.com or click the link down there. Okay, common problems and complaints inside. Let's start with the infotainment system, because there are plenty of complaints about this thing having all sorts of issues. Bluetooth and radio signals dropping out, screens locking up or showing glitchy images, the entire system restarting itself but then forgetting all of its saved presets. Plus, forget using the native sat-nav, it is completely shit. Some owners have even claimed that the car seems to think it's located in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. In saying that, according to the dealer technicians, apparently the earlier cars with the older systems tend to be a little bit more stable. The more recent models with more functionality, they can have more problems. Now, if it has problems, often a software update or 2 or 3 might fix the issue, but there are owners out there that have had to replace the entire infotainment system. Luckily, that was done under warranty, but warranty's not going to last forever, is it? Now, apparently the headliner, it can come loose like an old Ford Falcon, but just be careful on what you pay to get that fixed. One owner that we spoke to was quoted over $1,500 to fix this. That is daylight robbery. You shouldn't pay any more than about $500. Now, if you get a model with the optional performance seats, that's code 555, like these, this silver plastic here, it can get creaky and cracky and sound horrible. The issue is, to fix that is a complete and utter nightmare. And then there are the complaints surrounding the sound systems. Apparently the speakers, they can get a bit rattly over time. And on some of the earlier models, a few owners were just disappointed with the quality of sound. That might be why Mercedes updated or beefed up the amplifier post-update. Then we have HVAC or air conditioning issues. A range of different problems can happen here, from just certain functions not working to weird things like if the temperature is set to over 20 degrees, the console gets so hot you can't touch it, to blower motors blowing out, all sorts of HVAC problems. Here's another weird one, it's actually one I experienced. In the wagon, if it's empty at about 105 kilometers an hour, there's this weird harmonic rumble or hum that comes from the rear corners of the cargo area. It's very strange. Then we come to all of the reports of different rattles and squeaks in the interior. A number of owners from day one had the dashboard, instrument panel, door panels, windows, center console, and the infotainment display all rattling and just carrying on. Now look, I clearly love this car, but Mercedes, that is not good enough. For something asking over $150,000 when new, rattles and plastic creaks should not be an issue. Secondly, Mercedes, if you are going to be using lesser quality and more cost-effective components to build your cars, how about not charging your customers an absolute fortune for spare parts when it comes time to fixing them? One owner that we spoke to, and he's actually a mechanic, he had to put a new ABS module in one of these. Guess how much that was? $7,000. Are you kidding me? Also, owners have complained that the window switches, they can crack and fall apart. Some of the silver trim, it can start to peel off, and anything gloss finished, like the gloss carbon fiber or the gloss black plastic, it scratches really easily. Actually, manufacturers, if you're hell-bent on using gloss finishes in high traffic areas, can you please use more resilient coatings? I mean, we know it's going to look great on the internet, but after 30 seconds of use, it's going to be covered in fingerprints and scratches. Actually, just on scratches and how things wear in this particular car, and yes, obviously every C63, its wear and tear is going to vary from car to car, but in this, pretty bloody good. Luckily, no gloss black plastic here. This is all a matte satin finish, so it's quite good. Even the gloss black plastic around here, wearing really nicely. There are a few little marks in the leather here and there, and this is getting just a little bit loose, but not too bad. Otherwise, the leather's fantastic in this. Wear and tear in this car, great. Now, a few owners did mention that on the leather steering wheels, the leather can degrade prematurely. If it's wearing here more than anywhere here, that's a good sign that you drive like a wanker. If you drive like this, you're being a dick. I'm going to show you something. See how there's buttons here and even paddles? This is for the gearbox. You know why they're there? It's because that's where your hands go, not up there. Again, that makes you look like a wanker, and it's dangerous. Actually, also on the steering wheel, you've got to be really careful. It's a bit like the cleaning products before. You've got to be really careful of what hand creams you use. Apparently, the wrong hand cream with Alcantara can just make this like disgusting and almost slimy to touch. Now, this one's a bit controversial. With these performance seats, it is a split opinion on what people think of these. Obviously, they're super supportive for short periods of time. Plenty of owners have complained that more than an hour and they're feeling spinal issues. Personally, and I've had heaps of seat time in different C63s with the different options of seat, I think these are fantastic seats. I love them, and for hours. It is important to know my comfiest place in life is being strapped into a single piece racing bucket, so I'm a bit of a freak like that. But elsewhere in here, what an interior. From a design perspective, this is phenomenal. I adore it. Although it maybe doesn't feel quite as premium in certain areas as you might be expecting, that just feels a little bit on the cheap side. Now, as far as practicality goes, it's okay. You've got a really good sized glove box there with a deodorizer or an air freshener, I don't know what it is. Then you've got a little net down here. You've got a spot really well sized for your phone just here, and 2 cup holders. This is cool too. This is actually removable, so it's heaps easier to clean, or get rid of the cup holders and have more storage there. Oops, I think I broke it. Let's ignore that. You've got a bisexual center console because it opens both ways. You've got okay sized door bins, but they're a little bit on the shallow side. And a spot for sunglasses up here. That is it up front for practicality. Now, as far as what stuff you get, Mercedes-Benz didn't support Apple CarPlay or Android Auto prior to 2018. From 2018, they did offer a smartphone integration package, so that means Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. But the issue was you had to choose between either using the command infotainment system or Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. They don't work harmoniously together. Now, proper Apple CarPlay and Android support was offered in these from 2019 onwards. However, there's some good news here. Even though a lot of Mercedes dealerships will tell you that you cannot fit Apple CarPlay and Android Auto to earlier models, guess what? They're lying. Plenty of owners have with quality aftermarket systems and haven't had an issue. As far as using the infotainment and tech in here, it's okay. It's not as good as BMW iDrive, in my opinion. You do get used to it, but it's a bit of a faff around now and again. Now, as far as all of the other features go, look, this is the flagship C-Class. Obviously, it is loaded with kit. In fact, so much, if we were to go through it all, we'd be here for bloody days. Instead, get ready to hit pause now because we're going to list everything on a graphic on screen. Hit pause now. Obviously, it would be insane to try to remember all of that, let alone all of the common issues and problems. Luckily, you don't have to remember it because we've listed everything on the C63 cheat sheet at ReDriven.com. It is the ultimate used C63 buyer's guide. Link is below. Now in the backseat, I'm exactly centimeters taller than 2025 Mercedes F1 driver and George Russell's teammate. This is in my driving position, and you know what? For a coupe muscle car thing, it's actually not too bad. Okay, I've got to do the whole OnlyFans style leg spread to fit my legs in here, but there's an okay amount of footroom. The seats themselves, super comfortable. Yes, it feels incredibly claustrophobic because I'm in a dark little cave of Alcantara and materials and leathers and whatnot, but yeah, it's not too bad. I should mention, as I said before, I've had plenty of seat time in other C63s, and in the wagon and the sedan, they're good for rear seat room and accommodation. It's pretty much what you'd expect. As far as wear and tear in the back of this one goes, I don't think anyone's ever sat back here. There is no wear and tear. In terms of practicality, interesting. You've got two cup holders, plus another little cup holder for small pretentious coffees like the ones I drink. Like a macchiato, double ristretto, something like that. Air vents back here, that's it. No pockets, nowhere for storage. I just spot to hang your suit or a backpack or something just there, but that's about it. Now, as far as practicality in the back goes, obviously the wagon or the estate is the pick for practicality, coolness, and street cred. But even for this muscle car coupe thing, the boot's bloody massive. Although the opening aperture here is quite small, so if you've got a big suitcase, that could be a challenge. Now, while we're talking about the sensible stuff, we really do need to talk about safety, but like the features, there's just too much safety stuff to go through. We'll be here for hours. So instead, how about we show you a graphic of the safety features while providing arguably one of the best soundtracks of all time. Okay, now common complaints and faults when it comes to the driving experience. First of all, a few owners have had some issues with the steering. Apparently when the steering is at sort of 10 or 11 or 1 and 2, the software can make it feel like it's pulling the car into the bend at slow speeds, but then when you're coming out of the corner, it's also not progressive on the way out. Now, some owners have replaced the steering rack and have updated software. Sometimes this can work and other times it hasn't, because after a few hundred kilometers, the problem just comes back. Now, the next issue is that to get really the most out of a C63, you do have to go to a track. But the problem with that is, and I know this from experience, I've seen it time and time again, these things, they do not like track days when it's really hot. And the same can be said for the tyres and brakes. Both the steel and composite ones, they work an absolute treat, but go hard and yeah, they have an appetite to basically eat themselves. And the same can be said for tyres. These things, they perform beautifully, but they are hard on their tyres. Plus, to get the most out of these cars, those items have to be premium items, and it's going to be expensive. As will your expenditure on fuel, but if you're looking at buying a twin-turbo V8, fuel consumption really shouldn't be high on the priority list. Speaking of expensive, OEM and plenty of aftermarket wiper blades can cost an absolute bomb. Luckily, we're here to save you from getting ripped off. Simply hit the WiperTech link down there to get 15% off and free express shipping on some of the easiest to order, easiest to fit, and best wiping wiper blades we've ever used. Honestly, we all use WiperTech blades on all of our cars because they're bloody awesome. And then we come to the really big issue that these cars have from a driving experience. It is their insatiable appetite to get you into trouble. See, where so many performance cars can feel a bit mundane and honestly boring and sensible at normal speeds, this thing is just so much fun and engaging all the time. But the problem with that, it's like it's constantly coaxing you to have more of a go. And because our police force here in New South Wales have telepathic levels of sensing if you're doing something wrong, every time you flex that right foot, yeah, that could be my license. Plus, because the car is such a great size, it's relatively easy to park and negotiate in traffic, but then if you maybe need to come out of a roundabout and you hypothetically or accidentally flex that right foot a little early and the rear end kind of wiggles around a little bit, again, it's just going to get you into trouble. And then you've got this engine audibly, from the way it sounds on startup to anywhere in the rev range, it's an orchestra of masculinity under the bonnet. Look, this car, it's the perfect balance between raw muscle car, yet sophisticated and just nuanced dynamics. It's pretty close to perfect. But look, it's all good and well that it's a phenomenal car to drive. What about the mechanical issues? What goes wrong with these? I can't tell you because I'm not a qualified mechanic. Jim certainly is.
Being European and a performance car, a lot of the things you'd expect to be problematic, actually, mechanically, aren't too bad. Overall, engine internals, pretty stout. Timing chains, tough as. Turbos, hardly an issue. Cooling system, yeah, not that good. The cooling system isn't as bad as some other cars in its sector. Typically, it's not leaks that's causing the problem here, it's actually overheating. Now, in a hot climate, if you lean on it like in a track day, you are actually likely to see some overheating complications. And if it's modified and you lean on it, well, you're very likely to see some overheating complications. Now, the cooling system does have a few other issues. The electronic thermostat, it fails. Now, when it fails, it gets stuck open, thankfully, so the engine tends to run a little bit cooler. Problem there is it's very expensive and also really difficult to get at. You've got to pull half the front of the car off to do it. Yeah, it's a nightmare. And while you've got the front of the car off, have a really good look at the charge cooler at the front of the car. It's really prone to getting damage from rocks and things, and quite often can leak. And often you won't know you've got a leak, so you really got to check that central reservoir pretty frequently. Now, while you're checking that central reservoir, if you're using coolant and you can't see it anywhere, you might have a problem with one of the charge cooler heat exchangers. They leak internally, you can't see the leak. So if you're using coolant there, you need to have them checked. It's not a really common problem, but it does happen. Occasionally they have air oil or PCV complications where you can get a vacuum leak, and that tends to, like every other car, log a whole bunch of lean air fuel ratio fault codes. And with these, with the turbos, they can actually allow positive crankcase pressure, which can cause all sorts of oil leaking issues. Now, with those oil leaks, if you find that your valve covers are leaking, which they do sometimes, because everything's so tightly packaged in these cars, you can't physically, it's almost impossible to get the valve covers off the engine while the engine's still in the car, so you have to take the engine out to do it. Very expensive. And while you have the engine out, you also should do the engine mounts. They are very prone to failing as well. They're unnecessarily complicated, and when they fail, the car feels terrible. They are eye-wateringly expensive to buy, and to change them, you also have to take the engine out. So you might as well do it while it's out, because you don't want to pay for that shit twice. Less serious problems are injectors and coil packs. The coil packs, well, they both can fail and cause misfire, but the coil packs, often when they misfire, it's because the valve covers are leaking down into the spark plug tubes, which is part of the valve cover. So if that does happen, you have to take the valve covers off to fix them, which means you have to take the engine out again. Yeah, so it's a good idea. If you have to take the engine out for anything on these, just do everything at the same time. So later, you've saved yourself a fortune. The transmissions and drivelines in these, the transmissions are actually a Mercedes product. The better one to get is the pre-2018, the 7-speed. The later 9-speed can have a lot of valve body complications and software issues as well, but a lot of that was sorted out under warranty. The differentials in these, the electronic LSD, now they do fail often because they're actually they're piss weak basically. Problem is they're not designed to be serviceable, so when something does fail in those, like the clutches burn out or the bearings fail, you have to replace the whole thing, which is extremely expensive. Less expensive but equally as piss weak are the drive shafts. They fail often, especially if it's tuned. You are very likely to have issues there too. And speaking of tuned, yes, they respond really well and they're capable of immense horsepower and they're great fun. But I would say enjoy it while it lasts, because the AMG techs we've spoken to about these will say that when they're tuned and people lean on them, they do start breaking. And when they break, they are very expensive.
Now look, we know that the whole what goes wrong sections with this video make out this car as completely doom and gloom, but you need to understand there are thousands of C63 owners out there that have never and probably will never have an issue with their car. In fact, reading through the owners groups and forums, it does seem like the vast majority of owners out there will never have an issue. With fastidious maintenance, these can be completely reliable, especially if it's a 2017 car. Actually, just on this very 2017 model, it's for sale through our great mate at SP Motors, Sean, who's a legend for lending it to us in the first place. If you're interested in buying it, the link is down there. Okay, if you find an example just like this, so we're talking minimal mileage, perfect service history, clearly fastidiously maintained, minimal to no mods, and you go into C63 ownership both emotionally and financially prepared, oh my God, yes, you should buy one, because these things, they can be phenomenal cars. But can I ask you a favor? Please don't drive like a dickhead. I get it, the thing sounds amazing and it's going to stroke your ego to cataclysmic levels, but driving inappropriately in metro and suburban areas, it's just going to make you look like a complete wanker. And the other thing that will make you look like a complete wanker is being stuck on the side of the road in your fancy C63 with the bonnet up. That's why you should avoid any C63 that has been modified heavily or has even the slightest whiff of mistreatment or a sketchy history. And plenty of them do have a history exactly like that, and please trust us, they are not worth the risk. Plus, it is a shame that a premium brand like Mercedes-Benz no longer equates to premium quality. These days, you'll often find better fit and finish quality in a Kia or a Mazda than you will a current AMG. However, there is another car that if you're considering a C63, you may have ignored due to its unfortunate reputation with reliability, a reliability reputation that we think might be unfounded. It's this. But a question for you, if you weren't to buy this or this, what would you buy instead? Maybe a BMW M3 or an Audi RS4, maybe a Hyundai Getz? Let us know in the comments below. See you next time. Here are the choices that you're going to... Actually, manufacturers, if you're in... Sorry, man, here we go. My brain just completely stopped.